Erev Tov Rabotai, we're continuing with our Mishna Yomi, Masechet Beitzah. We're up to Perek Aleph, Mishnah Yud. Today's Mishnayot should be Le'elu Nishmat, Neria ben Svetlana, Aranbay, Neriyahu ben Burcha Yisraelov, Menuchatam beGan Eden, Amen, L'Avdi ben Chaim L'Chaim, for the Refuah Shnam B'Bracha Bat Esther, and Daniel Sham ben Rosa, B'Tok Shah Cholei Yisrael. This Mishnah lists more items that Beit Hillel permits sending as gifts on Yom Tov. The Mishnah begins, Mishalchin Kelim ben Tfurin ben Shena Tfurin. We may send clothes, whether they are pieces of material that are sewn together and can be worn as a garment, or pieces of material that are not yet sewn together and can be used only as covers. Vafel pishesh ben kilaim. Sending these items is permitted even if they contain a mixture of wool and linen, meaning they are shatnez, which may not be worn as clothing or even used as a cover. However, this is true only if the item is made of stiff material that provides no warmth, and therefore sitting or lying on it is not forbidden under the laws of shatnez. Now the Torah states in Sefer Vayikra chapter 19, pasuk 19, a garment containing a shatnez mixture shall not come upon you. A person is forbidden to wear or cover himself with cloth that contains shatnez, a combination of wool and linen, but that is prohibited. Wearing or covering oneself with a cloth of shatnez is prohibited only if it makes one warmer. When the Mishnah continues, Moed, all these articles may be sent as gifts because they are fit to serve a Yom Tov need. Finished clothes can be worn on Yom Tov, unfinished clothes can be used as covers, and stiff shatnez material can be used to lie or sit upon. However, clothes or anything else that cannot be used on Yom Tov may not be sent as a gift on Yom Tov because it does not fulfill a Yom Tov need. Bet Shammai, however, forbids sending any garments or cloths, even those that can be used on Yom Tov. They permit sending only items of food, such as those they listed in the preceding Mishnah. The Mishnah lists two items that may not be sent as gifts, even according to Beit Hillel. Avalos sandal hamsumar. However, we may not send nailed sandals because wearing them is forbidden on Yom Tov. The Mishnah refers to wooden sandals whose parts are held together with iron nails that slightly protrude. The sages prohibited wearing these sandals on the Shabbat or Yom Tov because of a tragic event. A group of people wearing such sandals once gathered in a cave to hide from enemies. When they heard noises from above, they panicked, fearing that they had been discovered, and ran to escape. In the stampede that followed, many were killed because of the nails in their sandals. To prevent similar tragedies, the sages prohibited wearing these sandals outside on days when people gathered together, such as the Shabbat and Yom Tov. Velo minal sheno tafur, and we may not send shoes whose leather pieces were not yet stitched together because they are not wearable. Even if the pieces are temporarily attached with small wooden pegs, the Rav says the shoe is not considered usable on Yom Tov and may not be sent. The next Tana adds another type of shoe that may not be sent. Rabbi Yehuda says, Af lo mina lavan, we may also not send white shoes, meaning leather shoes that have not yet been blackened, because they need a craftsman to blacken them before they are worn, and so one would not wear them on Yom Tov when blackening is forbidden. Now, in the place where Rabbi Yehuda lived, people did not wear shoes before they had been blackened. Since blackening is prohibited on Yom Tov under the Melacha of dyeing, white shoes were not usable there on Yom Tov. And the Mishnah concludes, this is the rule. Kol sheneotin bo b'Yom Tov mishalchin oto. Any item that is fit to be used may be sent as a gift on Yom Tov. Anything that is finished and does not require melacha to make it fit for use may be sent on Yom Tov, even if it is used only on weekdays. For example, tefillin, which are not worn on Yom Tov. We learned in the previous Mishnah that Beit Hillel allows sending a live animal on Yom Tov, even though it is not fit to be used as is, but requires slaughtering and cooking. That lenient ruling, however, applies only to something that can be used on Yom Tov itself. In the case of items that will not be used in Yom Tov, such as tefillin, the act of sending increases the enjoyment of Yom Tov only if it is a finished product. And that is the Rabotai of Perek Aleph, Mishnah Yud. We continue with Perek Bet, Mishnah Aleph. When Yom Tov falls on a Friday, it is permitted to cook that day for the next day, which is Shabbat. Now, in reality, the Torah permits cooking on Yom Tov only what is needed for that day. It is forbidden to cook on Yom Tov for the next day. However, it is biblically permitted to cook extra food on Yom Tov if it might possibly be used later that day. For example, for unexpected guests who arrive late in the day. The sages made use of this principle known as Ho'il V'im Maklele Ochim, as since guests might visit, or simply as since Ho'il. to permit cooking food for Shabbat when Yom Tov falls on Friday. This is the rule that the Chachamim used to permit cooking food for Shabbat when Yom Tov falls on Friday, as the Gemara says on Pesachim, page 46b. This principle applies only when there is enough time left in the Yom Tov day for the food to cook and be eaten that day. Otherwise, it is biblically forbidden to cook on Yom Tov for any other day, even Shabbat. Now again, although from the Torah, when Yom Tov falls on a Friday, you are allowed to cook that day for the next day, which is Shabbat, the rabbis prohibited cooking on Yom Tov for Shabbat unless one began cooking for it before Yom Tov. People will know that since they are forbidden to cook on Yom Tov even for Shabbat, they are certainly forbidden to cook on Yom Tov for a weekday. Our Mishnah discusses this rabbinic prohibition and the way around it. Yom Tov shechal yot erev Shabbat, lo yivashel batchila mi Yom Tov leShabbat. The sages decreed that when Yom Tov falls on a Friday, one may not begin cooking on Yom Tov for Shabbat. Aval mivashel hu liyom Tov, v'imotir otir leShabbat. Rather, he may cook only what he actually needs for Yom Tov, and if he left over any Yom Tov food, he may use what he left over for Shabbat. Although the sages prohibited cooking on Yom Tov for Shabbat, they also ruled that if one begins cooking for Shabbat before Yom Tov, he may continue cooking on Yom Tov for Shabbat. This allowed them to institute the following procedure to permit cooking for Shabbat. However, one may prepare a cooked dish before Yom Tov for Shabbat and rely on it to cook on Yom Tov for Shabbat. Since he began preparing food before Yom Tov for Shabbat, the sages permitted him to continue doing so on Yom Tov. In this case, the sages were not concerned that he might think he is permitted to cook on Yom Tov for a weekday, since he will see that even for Shabbat he is permitted only to finish what he began before Yom Tov. This rabbinic arrangement, which permits cooking on Yom Tov for Shabbat, is known as an Eruv Tavshilin. Eruv Tavshilin means combining cooked dishes. It is given this name because it allows a person to cook a combination of dishes on Yom Tov, some for the Yom Tov and some for Shabbat. The Mishnah cited dispute about how many cooked dishes are needed for Eruv Tavshilin. Bet Shammai omrim shnei tavshilin. Bet Shammai say 2 cooked dishes are required. Since at least 2 cooked dishes are usually eaten at a Shabbat meal, a person cannot be viewed as having started to prepare for Shabbat unless he cooked 2 dishes. Bet Hillel omrim tavshil echad. But Bet Hillel say 1 cooked dish is enough, because sometimes only 1 cooked dish is eaten at a Shabbat meal. V'shavin bedag u'betzah shalav she'en shnei tavshilin. V'shavin bedag u'betzah she'alav she'en shnei tavshilin. All agree, even Bet Shammai, that fish broiled with egg on top, egg was smeared over the fish when it was boiled. Rashi writes in page 15b, Pesachim Beitzah. Everyone agrees that is considered 2 cooked dishes with respect to Eruv Tavshilin, even though they are cooked together. The Mishnah discusses problems that may arise with the food that was cooked for an Eruv Tavshilin. Achalo o Shabbat, if it was eaten or lost before one started cooking on Yom Tov for Shabbat, lo yivashel alav batchila. One may not rely on that cooked dish to begin cooking on Yom Tov for Shabbat. Since the Eruv is missing, he is in effect now starting to cook for Shabbat. However, if he started a dish when the Eruv was present, he may finish what he had begun. However, if some of it remained, meaning at least a kazait, an olive-sized portion remained, this is the minimum required for Eruv Tavshilin in the first place, as the Gemara says on page 16b. Somech alav l'Shabbat. He may rely on what remains to cook on Yom Tov for Shabbat. And that is the Rabotai of today's Mishna Yomi. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen v'amen.